What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Beyond the Nines. We've got a very special video with a very special guest for you as well. We've got Owuraku from Ghana. Owuraku, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm all good, thank you. Again, thanks for joining. And again, obviously, you're a Ghanaian football expert. Just want to get your thoughts on one of our latest signings. So, Abdul Fatawu, in terms of him, first of all, in terms of how he started with his time at like Steadfast and Dreams, how has he progressed, and what kind of player can Leicester fans expect?
Well, I think you're going to get a really talented player who has a very high ceiling with regards to his development, has a lot of potential, but the question mark has always been whether he can reach the heights that he has established himself that he could potentially reach. Now, if you look at his story, is a very nice touch of a more or less like a motivational type of story where a few years ago he was playing at what we call the Milo Games, and that's a game usually organized for young footballers all across the country. And for a few years back, it's been more or less like a talent hub for and an opening, a platform for a lot of young players to get access to clubs and opportunities to be seen and all that. So Fatawu was one of the kids, played under 15, and then he joined Division 1 side, Steadfast. They play in the northern part of Ghana. And he caught the eye there where he was known for his very venomous left foot, where he could basically just shoot from anywhere and score goals. And he started making a name for himself throughout the Division 1. And then he went on the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations with the Ghana team, where it was his tournament where he scored the goal of the tournament. He was adjudged as the best player as well and was very crucial in providing an assist in the final. So that I would say that was more or less like the springboard and the turning point for Fatawu, where after that tournament he joined Dreams FC for just a few weeks. And in those weeks, he was the talk of town in the Ghana Premier League, where every week he was scoring either a cracker or a very, lovely goal. I remember one against Asante Kotoko where he just wriggled through defenders and placed the ball beautifully into the back of the net. And so he left the country with a lot of maybe weight on his shoulders because the expectations were really high. His growth was accelerated after that. We saw him being included in the national team, that's the Black Stars. And he ended up going to the World Cup, joined Sporting, where things didn't go as planned. But I still think that it's not been too bad of a hit with regards to his stay at Sporting, where I think he still has it in him to get back on track and reach the potential that everyone set out for him.
Fantastic, yeah. Because again, there's something that we've seen just from the brief plays. But what do you think the reason why Club Sporting Portugal it didn't work is that because of again he didn't fit the system? From what we've read as well, he just fell out of favor because they don't really play with wingers.
Yeah, so it's a tricky situation because the thing is he attracted a lot of European clubs after that Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations that he did so well. And it was widely reported that Liverpool were going to sign him. And Sporting literally came from nowhere and wrapped up the deal. I remember even at the point, everyone thought he was going to go to Bayern Leverkusen after Liverpool didn't work out. But Sporting came in, they soaked him. And the thing with Sporting is that they understood that he was a young player, needed to adapt to the European style of play because even in Ghana, he hadn't played enough top-level games. And so they started with the youth teams where he kind of progressed really quickly because the technical team saw him in a few games and thought he deserves to go to a higher level. So he kept on being pushed since joining in that's the winter transfer window. And, the story came out that he was going to join the first team for the next season. And so for preseason, I thought that was the biggest mistake because the fast track was a bit too much for the player where he jumped right from, the U teams to the A team where it's a really different scenario and situation, especially playing in Europe and all that. And I think that sort of took a hit to his assimilation and adaptation period and ended up affecting the player because he was in a team where he was struggling to settle. He had just come into a new country. There's also that language barrier. And then there's Ruben Amorim, who is a very tactically astute coach, demands a lot from his players and would really watch the game to the finest details. And if you look at Fatawu, he's more or less like a work in project. He's more or less like a work in progress, where he's still working on aspects of his game. And so I remember in the first few games, he was tried as a left wing back, and that is not his strongest position. And, Amartey just kept on tossing him around the team. And if you could realize, even last season, whenever he dropped from the A team, you look at the youth league, he came in against Ajax and he scored a hat trick. And it was so evident that that was his level at the moment. But right after that hat trick, Amartey brought him back into the A team. And because of that, he couldn't play in the youth league anymore. And so it was a bit of a confusing move from Amartey. But I just genuinely believe that it didn't work out as Sporting due to a number of factors, the environment and how he was fast-tracked and all that. But I think a loan move, change of environment was the right thing for him. He's still a young player. And as I said earlier, he can always bounce back to the level that was expected of him.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I'm hoping so as well. And he's looked fantastic. Again, 30 minutes that we've seen of him, he's looked fantastic. I know you tweeted about the left foot strike. Is that what we can expect going forward? Because that little moment, even though in that first half he's coming up against some really tough people in the winger position, he came on and he really stamped his mark on that game, even if we didn't score or didn't win.
Yeah, I think that's what you can expect from him. A bit of spontaneity, because he's very direct, because he's still in his raw form. He's not measured in risk taking. And so if he sees 2-3 defenders, he's trying to go through them and get an opportunity in there. And so that there's a little bit of a benefit to that, because he's a high risk type of player, would always want to try and make things work, even if, the team as a collective is not playing well. So I think you get a lot of brilliant, flashy moments from him, although the question marks also are around the consistency, and can he be more measured in his approach? And that, I think, has been the biggest critique of him, especially when he moved to the national team. The thing about Fatawu is that he knows he has a great left foot and can literally score from anywhere if you take a look at his highlight reel. But in professional football, you need to know when to pass and when to shoot. And I think even in the game against Hull, he was taking shots from some very incredible angles that didn't go too well. And so it's almost like there are two sides to the coin, where he may score some incredible goals, but he would also frustrate you a bit with some of the decisions that he makes. But the thing is that he's a young player, very energetic, and I think his positives outweigh his negatives. So I do think he would be a net positive for Leicester going forward in this season.
I'm hoping so as well. And I think he's going to be, again, a player that we're looking to develop. When our coach in terms of Enda Maresca is known for bringing up youth teams as well. So in your opinion, do you think, especially Leicester being in the ambition to get back to the Premier League, in the Championship, in a good position at the moment, do you think it's the right move for him?
It's a bit tricky, because I think I rate the Championship really highly. I think it's probably in the top 10, top 12 European leagues. And that's comparing it to other first divisions across the continent. And so I think it's a very, very tough league, and that is manifested in the prize money that you do get when you do win. And I think that contributes to how much clubs invest in their resources, the players, and also the level of competition and all that. So it's a different landscape for him. Maybe he'll play to his advantage, because I think it's probably a very physical league, something that he's very used to from his time in Ghana. And so that could play to his benefits. But from the point of view of Leicester City, you're looking at a club that have had some success in English football and have dropped a level to where they feel they don't belong. And so there's that form of added pressure, because for clubs like Leicester City, they want to get back to the Premier League as soon as possible. And so there isn't really a lot of room for patience. And so Fatawu needs to hit the ground running, needs to start getting the numbers, needs to start being efficient, because this isn't a project. It's a loan move. They brought you here because they want to get back into the Premier League. So you're supposed to contribute to that. But there's also a player who's trying to find his feet in Europe, has had a very bad time in Sporting, and probably needs to settle a bit. So there's a bit of a contrast with the expectations from the two parties, that's Leicester City and Fatawu. But I think there may be a middle ground where Maresca will probably ease him in. He understands the situation. Fatawu kept on hammering on the fact that he's spoken to Maresca, and he's one of the reasons why he actually joined Leicester. So I assume he has a plan for him. He understands the situation and probably would help him adapt to the Championship a bit better.
And that's one. I'm glad you say that because again, Enzo's been for our signings this season. Enzo's been a massive part and has come to the focal point of that as well. And obviously, he's played as a left. He's played on the right with his left foot. He's so powerful. Is there the option of playing on the left as well? Because again, we do have cover, but why would it not be his favourite position if he's more left-footed?
Well, it's one of his strengths, coming in off the right flank and shooting. Is if you look at most of the goals that he scored, even the first goal that he scored for the Black Stars against Nicaragua last year before the World Cup, it was a similar situation where he cut into his left foot from the right wing, and then he played the ball into the net to get his first goal for the Black Stars. So I think that's more or less his niche, what he knows how to do. And so once you move him from the right wing to the left wing, it's almost like you've taken his biggest strength from him. And so as a player, it kind of limits him because now he's forced to go down the line and put in a cross, which is not his biggest strength. I think it's one of the areas that he has to work on with regards to picking his final passes and crossing. And so maybe that could be to help develop him. But as I said, Leicester are after results now. And so if they do want the now, then they have to tap into his strength, which is cutting in from the right wing and shooting. But I did realize that in the game against Hull, there were times that he actually went on the outside of his marker and put in some crosses with his right. That, for me, impressed me a lot because that's one of the things that he wasn't doing, especially with the national team. Everyone knows he's left-footed, and he always wanted to cut in on his left foot, and he was making him a bit predictable at times. But seeing him go on the outside and use his right foot, which he was reluctant to use, shows that at least he's trying to improve and trying to work on some aspect of his weaknesses.
Mm-hmm. Which is, again, really good to hear as well. That and coming into obviously a few with the future of Ghana, obviously with AFCON this year, there's in the right position. Just looking at that, there's quite a few positions. Obviously, Jordan Ayew, Bakari is also in that position as well.
Yeah.
Coming into probably January, is this going to be a position where there's going to be a lot of competition, especially on that right-hand side?
I think it's quite unfortunate for Fatawu, but the most competitive position in the Black Stars right now is the wing position. Now, I say this because you're looking at Jordan Ayew, Kamaldeen Sulemana as the starting wingers. And then you have your two impact subs in Joseph Paintsel and then Osman Bukari. And then there's a number of other players like there's Ransford Koenigsdorfer, who recently naturalized for the Black Stars. And there are other wingers or other players who can actually play as a winger. Andre Ayew, Mohamed Kudus, they can all be deployed as wingers. And so you're looking around and thinking, it could probably be a problem position for him. Even Inaki Williams has been used as a right winger. So it is competitive. That's been established. But a good thing for him is that him being called to the national team when Paintstil was injured means that Chris Hughton still has him in his plans. And to be on the standby list means that he's not too far from making the actual squad. And so I think personally, he just needs a good run of games between now and January. Given that Ghana qualified for the AFCON, once he plays well, he's in the news, people are talking positively about him, I think he would make the team because he's already made the ultimate. That's goal for the World Cup. And so an AFCON is more or less like a level below. So if he's gone to the biggest competition in world football, that's the World Cup, then it's really barriers broken. And I think that it is not too far of a reach for a player like Fatawu, but he just needs to pick up form and start doing some really positive stuff with Leicester City, and he should be fine.
I think he will. I think you're right as well. And I think he will be, especially with 2 games coming a week now. He constantly from now to the end of the season, it's his opportunity to shine, especially on that right-hand side. And we've got, again, other people in that position. Again, we've got Yunus Akgun as one. We've got Marcel that's coming to our academy as well. So we've got other people. But just coming into other Leicester City players with Ghanaian links, Daniel Amartey, he's obviously moved to Turkey now as well. But how do Ghanaians see his time at Leicester City?
Amartey was I think he's one of the most appreciated and loved players for the Black Stars. You barely see people hate on Daniel Amartey, especially with his time at Leicester and all that he achieved. He's been, I would say, a faithful servant for the Foxes, where he came in from Denmark, played across multiple positions, He could play as a right back, as a centre back, could step into the defensive midfield position. And, he's been part of the success story and the rise of Leicester City. And so people view him positively, with the team. And it's almost synonymous that when people mention Leicester City in Ghana, they're thinking of Daniel Amartey. So I think he's kind of like pioneered that, that sort of thinking and opened possibilities up for, Leicester City being linked with Ghana and all that. So if I was to summarize his time at Leicester, I think it was a good period for him. He more or less sometimes played a bit part role, but there were times where he was consistent as well. Could it have been better? Yes, I think so. But overall, I think he's been part of a really huge success story that we've seen in English football, the rise of Leicester City. And it's helped him, especially with his profile, because he's now grown into becoming a very important player for the Black Stars, where he's now one of the captains of the national team. So I think it was a good time overall for him.
Yeah, I think so as well. Especially when he came in the year that we won the Premier League. He's been in the FA Cup. He's got lots of trophies. Again, Community Shield. He played in that as well. It's not just he's been part of the squad. He's actually led and deserved to get a medal as part of it as well, which has been fantastic. And another player as well that's obviously come through our academy. Doesn't really feature for Ghana anymore, but Jeffery Schlupp came through our academy. Plays for Ghana at the moment. What do you think of his future potential with Ghana at the moment? Because again, come through our academy, he's gone to Crystal Palace at the moment. But what do you see for his future with Ghana and Jeffery Schlupp?
No, I think the chapter with Schlupp is closed. I mean, before the World Cup, we did see his agent and his handlers come out, and they were not too happy with the Ghana Football Association with how they treated their player. We never really had full details on what happened, but I remember at that time when I was reporting on the story, the news that I had was that the way that Otuado, who was the head coach of the Black Stars at that time, communicated with Schlupp didn't go too well with him and his team, and they felt disrespected at that time with regards to the World Cup squad. And so since then, the player has not been involved. Even before the World Cup, he had not been involved in the national team for a long time. And I think the chapter is really closed. We've seen him play a number of games for the Black Stars where he's played as a left back and hasn't really played in his favorite role in midfield, either playing as a left back or as a winger. And so I think that chapter can really be considered as closed. And in this moment in his career, he'll probably want to focus on club football and maybe get the best out of what he can with Crystal Palace.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. But yeah, Owuraku, thank you so much for coming on. Again, I'll leave your link to your Twitter and everything down below. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Again, if you'd like subscribe, everybody, make sure you check out the channel and we'll see you all in the next video. So goodbye.